let's look at the fasces, okay? So we can look at image number 1 in the fasces section. Now, what the fasces is, you will see it depicted there in image number 1, is a bundle of rods or staffs, okay, that are tied together, often lashed together with leather or some other form of material, and they are lashed around a central axe. The axe is sometimes depicted in the middle of them, or it is sometimes lashed directly to this larger bundle of rods or staffs. Now, what this is, and this derives out of the ancient Roman culture, the ancient Roman Empire, this is a symbol of centralized authority, centralization of power. Okay, we'll see how this is used in the modern world, has been used in the modern world. It represents, the axe represents the central authority, okay? It represents the empire, so to speak. It represents the larger centralized government, okay? And the smaller staffs are representative of the satellite states or satellite nations that form the empire, that are ruled from the central authority of an emperor or a king or a pope or a leader, etc. So essentially the cutting blade of the axe keeps all of the other satellite nations, so to speak, in line. Okay, it represents the greatest power, and then all of the other things are subservient to it, so they are bound by it. They are bound to it. Okay, you can clearly see where this symbolism is going as far as concepts and ideas of authority. It's an authoritarian symbol, and it represents greater centralization of power, meaning once you have people recognizing your claims and acting on your behalf and doing what you are telling them to do, you then acquire more of this capability, and it becomes easier to centralize even faster and build up and build up and build up. And that's what we're seeing, a march toward globalization and a march toward ever increasing centralization of power, whereby fewer and fewer people make decisions that control other people's lives and try to tell them what they may or may not do, regardless of whether they are harming anyone or not. Of course, this is completely antithetical to natural law, to the concept of principles, to the concept of human rights, and to the concept of right versus wrong. Okay? And the perpetrators of this know this ultimately at the highest levels, because they're psychopathic madmen, completely imbalanced to the left brain, basically don't really have a soul like you and I do, and as we perceive the human soul, they don't have those qualities because they're psychopathic and really can't experience human emotion. And they use this symbol wherever authority is demanded or commanded, wherever they say, we are the authority, okay? And this is the symbol that's going to show you that we're the authority, that we're in charge, we're the boss, what we say goes. And again, this is all utter nonsense, it's utter crap, it's utter BS. All authority in this domain, in the three-dimensional space-time realm, anywhere you go within it, is illusionary, and it's a claim that exists. And I don't care who claims to the contrary, you're wrong. The end. The end, you're wrong. There is no authority in the three-dimensional space-time continuum that we call the physical universe in the flesh. Doesn't exist, isn't going to exist, never has existed. It's a claim. It's a claim that exists only within the minds of the people making the claim and those accepting the claim. And that's all it is. Because there is no authority here in this space-time dimension. There is no innate authority, no inherent authority. It's an illusion. It's all a claim to try to control other people, When somebody says the phrase, I have the authority, or this entity has the authority, you know what that's called? It's called mind control, ladies and gentlemen. And that's all it's called. And that's all it is. And if you actually believe that claim, you're under mind control. The end. You know, cry about it, pound your fists on the desk, bang your head against the wall all you like. Nothing will ever change the fact that that's the truth. That's all it is. Okay? No one has authority over anybody else in point of fact reality, meaning objective reality. And there is such a thing. Again, we get into the ideas of moral relativism and solipsism, and these ideas that my truth is different than your truth, and what you are saying about authority, may be true for some people and not for. No, it isn't. There is such a thing called right and wrong. It exists objectively. If you understand natural law by studying it and its ramifications, you will understand that which right is and that which wrong is. And I do clearly understand what those things are. And it's very simple. Right is any action you do have a right to take which doesn't harm another. Period. You're not creating physical harm. I was talking about this with a friend. We were we were talking about the natural law transgressions. The traditional things that are looked at as being wrong or going against natural law. And this is just an aside to symbolism for a moment. But, people have boiled them down to 4: murder, rape, trespass, and theft. Now, that's quite a simplification, but I said we could go down and simplify it even further. And really, it's all ultimately one thing. There is one ultimate wrong that you can do, that you can take. If you really think about it and boil it down, okay? And many very aware and conscious spiritual teachers have actually made this observation, okay? People who, if they do make this observation, listen to them because they know what they're talking about, okay? I won't give any names, but I could think of a couple off the top of my head that I did hear this from in the past, and it's a very astute and profound observation when it comes to natural law. When we're talking about what is harming people, we look at murder, okay, you could extend that into assault, or taking physical violence against somebody without cause, without the right to do so. It's the initiation of undue force. You can have a right to use force, but only if someone is employing undue force against you, which is called violence. Okay? So violence, essentially, is number one. Okay? Then rape, and that's a form of violence, of course. It's sexual violence. Okay? And then theft. Okay? Taking something that doesn't belong to you. And trespass, which you could boil down to destruction of property or being in someone's space that they are actually employing, living in, using without, the right to be there. They've staked the claim to this space. That's their living conditions and environment, and you're going into their, unwarrantedly. So you could boil all these things down to one thing, and that's theft. And that may sound strange to some people, but if you think about it, if you're killing someone, you're taking their life, and you didn't have the right to do it, if it's murder, okay? If you're beating them, or taking physical violence in some form against them, and you didn't have a right to do it, you're taking their health or their physical well-being. If you're taking their things, that's self-evident, that's very obvious. You didn't have a right to do that. That's just straight theft. And if you're taking their, damaging their property, you're taking their right to basically, be secure in their environment, and, that extends to damaging the product of their labor or thieving from the product of their labor. That's called taxation, which is theft. It's all theft in one form or another. Theft is the ultimate transgression. It's really everything else, every other transgression, every other form of moral wrong is another variant of theft, if you really think about it and get down to it. Okay? So The reason I was talking about this is because we were getting into the idea of authority as represented by the fascist symbol. Okay, and of course, this is the symbol that represents fascism. That's what fascism is named after, this symbol. Okay, because fascism is totalitarian authoritarianism, meaning there is absolute control by the state, and there is no room for argument. What we say goes, and if you don't agree, violence is going to be carried out against you. That's called totalitarianism. That's rapidly what the United States of America is moving toward, a totalitarian form of government. And people think there's a big difference between fascism and socialism, and this is another artificial dichotomy. They're the same thing. They're total control in the name of violence, saying, if you don't do what we say in the way we say it, we will conduct violence against you. And that's it. That's what all authority is, if you really boil it down. That's it. It's somebody saying, I'm in control, you're going to be subservient to me, and if you don't do what I say, I'm going to be violent against you, when I don't have a right to do that. And that's what all authoritarianism is, which is why I believe in none of it, because I'm not under mind control. Because that's all of that is. This whole argument that there's any such thing as authority is ultimately what the entire world view of mind control is built upon. Claims of authority in the flesh, when no such thing exists, because you're not God. That's why. You want to really come down to it? Okay? The institution of governments is an idea that even is predicated upon the idea that man is God. Okay? Because if that authority doesn't exist in any individual, how can multiple individuals combine non-existent authority to institute governments? It's all mind control. It's all trying to get people to accept the idea of authority which does not exist. You believe in illusion, you get an illusionary world that creates suffering. The end. That's it. You want to take anything away from this show? That's it. You want to continue to believe in illusion, things that don't exist, and continue to act upon them, you're going to continue to get more suffering. I don't know how much simpler I can put that, but there it is. So this is the fascist symbol and what it represents in the eyes of control freaks. Control freaks. You know, people who hate themselves so much that what they really want to do is just make other people's lives miserable by conducting violence against them in some form. That's it. That's all it is. These are self-loathing people and always have been. Why? Because they've never really turned inward and understand where real power lies. They've never found that place of power within themselves and the connection to the true source of creation. They don't have that capability, maybe some of them, you know? And instead of seeking healing, which our society should do, you know, all they do is they seek control. So this is one of these sick, twisted notions, and this is a sick, twisted symbol. And what I would say is, indeed, this does represent kind of almost a unidimensional way of looking at a symbol. I don't know of any other interpretation for the fasces itself. It's a complex symbol. You can look at the axe a little bit differently. The axe is used in ancient astrotheology as well to represent the sun god again. Okay? But the fasces itself is a multi-tiered symbol. It's combining multiple smaller symbols into a larger one. So there's a pretty clear understanding of its representation symbolically. In image number 2 here in this section, we see the fasces used on the Italian flag during Mussolini's reign. Okay, clearly an example of fascism, as Mussolini ran a fascist government. On image number 3, here's more fascism. Oh, we call the Nazis fascist. Well, they're National Socialists, right? It was a National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. Well, here's the symbol of fascism right on their postage stamp from 1938, I believe. Okay? So, with Hitler on it. The fasces there depicted on the left. Now, where else will we see the fasces? Well, in some pretty surprising places, connected with government and monetary institutions. We look at the House chamber in image number 4. And this is where the House meets, the House of Representatives. And you have 2 fasces on both sides of the main seat where the Speaker of the House sits, in image number 4 there. All right? 2 fasces. I thought this was supposed to be a republic. Well, if it's supposed to be a republic, we clearly have fascist symbolism in the main house of the Republic of the United States. There's some mixed symbols there, I would say. Mixed messages. Maybe so if you think this is actually a republic. But if you know what this government really is, that symbolism is totally appropriate. I would say if you know what any government is, you understand that that symbol is very appropriate.